attendee?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Not 100% on that.
Okay, Shante, here's the thing. If I somehow kick you off completely, please come back, okay? We're figuring this out a little bit. Okay, we're gonna give it a shot here. Oh, I think I completely removed her. Oh, all right. And it looks like we have a few more. Oh, there's a commissioner in the attendees. We're gonna figure this out.
You need me to not be in here, Todd?
No, you should be in there, but I have an attendee. I have a Jeanette is in the attendees as opposed to in the panelists. And here's Victoria. We're working this out. We're figuring it all out. There's kind of a delay, I think, after I click on people. To when they actually enter in. Huh. So Victoria's worked. Jeanette's did not. Let me try Jeanette again. Remy, I'm wondering if you might be able to promote Jeanette. I'm not seeming to be able to. Great. And Shelby, I don't know if you're in touch with Shantae, but it looks like I booted her off unintentionally. And I don't know if you can let her know that she should come back. Looks like there's no way to move people back and forth between panelists and attendees.
Yes, her direct supervisor is getting her hooked up. Cecilia's probably 8 steps ahead of us.
Excellent. And Remy, I assume we are live already.
That is correct.
Okay. The public can admire my Zoom fumbling. So just a shout out to Jeanette. I just got a message that won't be showing screen because joining from the phone. So thanks, Jeanette. Heard. Welcome, Wolfgang. Hello, Ernest.
Hello, Todd.
We are slowly assembling ourselves here. I think I'm sure we're anticipating a few folks more than this, but maybe not the entire commission tonight.
Okay.
I see Mariah just put in the chat that Victoria is going to represent on behalf of LAJC, so may not need to be a panelist. Mariah, I don't want the same fate to befall you. So is there a way? I'm going to try to move you.
I can try to come back.
Just try to see if you can come back.
All right, I'll try to come back then.
Maybe if you hop off and I don't remove you, that might work. Because I think if I remove you, it might make it harder to come back. Okay, cool. Oh, there you are. Perfect.
I just saw the option to change role to attendee pop up out of nowhere. I did not see it before.
Excellent.
We'll hope it sticks around.
Oh, yeah, me too. I don't want to accidentally remove folks. And Jessica's here. Welcome, Jessica.
Good evening, everyone.
And here's Catherine.
Todd, I keep getting the panel Zoom request to my old email. That's why I'm always like scrambling because it's not going where I need it to go. So I know
It's
it'll be
not going to
fixed.
the .gov email.
No.
I'll chat with Remy about that later.
Okay.
Not to start off with the really shallow, but Jessica, your hair looks fantastic.
Hey,
I
no,
was just sending her a text
no.
saying the same thing.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys noticed. It was a pretty drastic thing. So
It looks fabulous.
thank you. Thank you.
Shelby, I was just reading your bit on the chat there. Did you say Joy would like to be an attendee? Or Joy, maybe you can answer that question. I think we've just figured out how to make people attendees if they want to be attendees.
I don't want to speak for her, but I do think she wants to be an attendee for this round for now.
Okay, let me see if that magic function. I do not have said magic function. Maybe only Remy has that. And it looks like he worked the magic. Cool. Jessica and Mary, are we anticipating others come in this evening? Do we know if anybody said they were not coming?
I haven't heard from anyone that said they wouldn't be coming.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. Let you all decide when you want to proceed.
Maybe I'll give it like 2 more minutes. I know it's like the end of the workday and people are probably, or I'm speaking of myself. I know I'm like scrambling in the house trying to get food, table, kids in the house. So.
We need some elevator music.
I'm sorry, full transparency, I'm also gathering myself together, so. Yes, we do. Ernest, come on, play something.
I was about to say, don't threaten me with the good time, Ernest. You'll know I'll sing.
Somebody cue music. Okay, so I'll be official. We'll officially get the meeting started at 6:08 p.m. And I'm not sure if anyone maybe has heard from Andy, but hopefully maybe he can join us later. So thank you guys for our guests that are here and for our participants online. The number is growing. We have 9 attendees. I'm so excited. So let's go ahead and get started with our roll call.
Great. We'll just go down, starting with Chair and Vice Chair, Jessica Harris
Here.
and Ernest,
Here,
Jeanette,
Here, thank you.
Mary,
Here.
Wolfgang,
Here.
Catherine,
Here.
and I don't think Tabia is here.
I was about to say, don't threaten me with a good time, Ernest.
Andy, not here. And Lindell.
Here.
Now we'll do our awkward recital of our mission. Act as a strong advocate
to justice and equal opportunity
opportunity
By
by
providing
providing
citywide
citywide leadership and guidance
area.
area of civil rights.
Awesome. So this is a special meeting to talk about public and subsidized housing, and we will have a couple presentations, and the rest of this meeting time will be open discussion. And we want to hear from the attendees that are present with your concerns that you've brought up. We're having this town hall, and we'll have one in March, discuss another topic, but this is an opportunity where we just want to hear from you. And then from there, as we gather as much information as we can, we'll decide on best actions moving forward. But I want those that are here and attending that tonight will mainly be listening. And then there are questions from our guests that maybe we'll to answer. We do have a public comment section, but again, because we want to hear from you, we will have opportunities for open dialogue. We'll try to keep it at the 3-minute mark for each speaker. So we'll go ahead and move forward. So tonight we have our public housing assistance of residents and legal aid justice center here that will present information related to availability and conditions currently in Charlottesville related to subsidized housing. So I will turn it over to our guests, Victoria and Shelby.
I think that I'm sort of going first in this setup, but Shelby, just jump in if you want to start off. My name is Victoria Horak. I'm an attorney at the Legal Aid Justice Center, and mostly what I wanted to do was just also come to listen to what tenants are saying from different housing complexes around the city. But I wanted to give a little bit of background about what we do and what we can offer people. We are a free legal aid. So what that means is if there are residents of Charlottesville or Albemarle or some of the other surrounding counties, we can represent people who are under a certain level of poverty. You have to be income eligible for our services, but otherwise we're free lawyers for people under a certain income level. And we also have community organizers, and we can help people, especially with housing cases. That's one of the areas we focus on. So we can assist tenants who are facing eviction, who have really extreme housing conditions, who are facing housing discrimination, or having like their housing vouchers terminated. Those are just some examples of the types of cases that we do. And then we also have other programs where we have other attorneys who represent immigrant clients and folks who are needing help with public benefits or consumer issues. So really anything other than criminal or family law issues, you can call our office and get advice or representation from an attorney. So I wanted to let participants know what we can offer in that realm. The other thing I wanted to give people a little bit of background on, and I can try to figure out a way to share. I also don't think I can share my, oh wait, maybe I can share my screen. Let me give this a shot. Because we do have, both Shelby and I have a little bit of written information that we wanted to share with folks.
You should be able to
About-
now, both of you. So I just changed the settings. I
Oh,
think.
great. Everyone's having to like watch my tech incapabilities at the same time, but if people can see this, it's just a little presentation, or just like a little bit of information about tenants' rights in Virginia. And I wanted to go over that. A lot of what we want to hear from people is about the issues they see in terms of conditions and the lack of affordable housing in the area. And I wanted to give people a sense of like what laws exist. I would say laws in this area, especially related to conditions, are woefully inadequate for most tenants, but they do exist. Every tenant in Virginia is protected by the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. That's the state law. So no matter what kind of like rent you pay or anything like that, you're protected, and it requires landlords to keep fit and habitable housing. That means like plumbing, electrical, sanitation facilities, smoke detectors, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, all those basic services. And utilities have to be kept in working order. Also, the landlord has to make repairs within 14 to 30 days of getting notice that something's a problem, unless it's an emergency. So if like your heat is out, they have to make those repairs a little bit faster. We all know that that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Quick question. So like in the case of an emergency, what does the law say about how quickly you have to respond to an emergency situation like that?
Oh, very annoyingly, great question, but very annoyingly, it doesn't say. So that's always a fun fight you can have with your landlord when there's an emergency. The way I construe it is somewhere between like 24 and 72 hours. That's kind of, I think, what the standard are. Like a judge, I think, would say that for a problem that's really serious, like lack of heat in the winter time, any kind of flooding, lack of sanitation facilities, those sorts of things. And that these are things like if this happens to a tenant and their landlord isn't doing the right thing, they can call our office and we can assist with these problems, especially in an emergency situation. But yeah, sadly, there's a lot of like reasonable timeframes in the law, which is always a little bit confusing when you're trying to get your landlord or maintenance person to actually like fix a problem. Also, I should note that it's illegal for landlords to retaliate against tenants for asking for repairs, because I know a lot of tenants are often like afraid of speaking up about the problems in their communities because they're afraid of landlord retaliation, and it's a legitimate fear. There are definitely bad actor landlords in the world that do this, but it is against the law. I wanted to just mention two other laws that may protect a lot of tenants. One is that there are both federal and state housing discrimination laws that prohibit landlords from discriminating against tenants. For a lot of reasons, there's a prohibition on race discrimination, religious discrimination, sex discrimination, discrimination against families with children, or people with disabilities, discrimination based on sexual orientation or how you pay your rent. There are a number of categories that are protected both under Virginia and federal law. And both our office as well as the Human Rights Commission can help people with those issues. And I bring this one up because I think we're going to talk about a lot of issues with conditions and affordability that just frankly don't affect people equally among all communities. And so we know that a lot of these communities that are supposed to be protected are actually suffering more from lack of affordable housing and from some of these conditions issues. So I wanted to just put that in there. And then the last thing I'll say is that there are a lot of apartments in this area that are subsidized by money from the federal government. And really sadly, a lot of those are some of the ones with the worst conditions issues these days, even though it doesn't have to be that way. But tenants in those communities have like increased tenant rights under federal law as well. So if any tenants who are listening or people who are working with tenants experience any of these issues, they can call our office for legal assistance.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, y'all. My name is Shelby. I use she, her, hers, and I'm the executive director of the Charlottesville Public Housing Association of Residents. Thank you so much for the audience this afternoon. I do know that a lot of this will be preaching to the choir, but I do think it's important that we're having a public conversation about that. So the first thing I wanted to do was talk briefly about the FAR mission. Then I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the state of conditions in subsidized housing in Charlottesville, and also demystify some common misconceptions of public housing in our area. So first things first, FAR's mission is to educate and empower low-income residents to protect and improve our own communities through collective action. We do this in several ways at FAR, which include our FAR internship program, which has graduated 70+ residents, our housing redevelopment efforts, which I'll touch on a little bit later, but we are currently working about 4 out of 7 sites on redevelopment efforts. It also includes our community organizing efforts, so mobilizing residents, improving the quality of life as it states in our mission. And lastly, Residents for Respectful Research. FAR believes that residents have a right to know what research is occurring and how it's being done. I also would be remiss if I didn't notate that in 24 CFR 964, it's a HUD regulation that gives FAR the power to do what we do and achieve our mission and educate and advocate with low-income residents. So today, I want to discuss the conditions that we are in when it comes to subsidized housing. And throughout the presentation, I will be referencing several documents, scholarly articles, and if anybody would like access after the presentation, please let me know. But we cannot have a conversation about subsidy in Charlottesville without first talking about Vinegar Hill, right? I'm sure a lot of folks who are listening are well aware, but Vinegar Hill is one of many examples of racially motivated segregationalist policies with significant impacts on affordable housing outcomes in the city of Charlottesville. Decades of disinvestment in affordable housing in the city have resulted in the extreme disrepair many people picture when they think of public housing. This disinvestment was fueled by federal trends and reinforced by the narrative that poor conditions in public housing come as a result of those living in it, that high concentrations of impoverished families within a neighborhood continue the cycle of poverty. But what actually happens, what actually keeps families living in public housing isn't an inability or unwillingness to achieve self-sufficiency. Public housing is a necessity in a nation where access to housing, which is a scarce resource and basic human right, is priced as a luxury and restricted item based on income. Public housing for a lot of our residents is their home and will continue to be. And those who are already mostly socially, economically vulnerable, particularly low wealth and non-white families, often can't find affordable housing on the private market because there simply are none available, or there's no one in the private market willing to take responsibility for that. And in order to determine whether public housing works, we'd have to examine it from a resident's perspective. Is the housing improving their circumstances, providing housing stability, increasing health and educational outcomes? Does it decrease their risk of homelessness and eviction? Does moving into public housing better their quality of life? For a lot of our residents, the answer is yes. And despite decades of disinvestment and political attempts to decrease government housing assistance, public housing continues to be for many the only avenue for affordable housing. We hear many people use the term affordable housing, and I just want to be super duper clear that affordability for us encompasses our residents, which means that we need housing that meets the needs of the residents who make between 0 and 0% of the area median income. And ongoing redevelopment efforts like the one FAR is helping to do at South First Street, Crescent Halls, 6th Street, and soon West Haven are efforts meant to change this narrative by providing decent, desirable housing. We are putting residents in the driver's seat to undo the disrespect that was tearing down Vinegar Hill to begin with. But even this does not change the cultural problem that persists. There are people who look down on residents for not achieving quote unquote upward mobility. And they are the same people who consistently advocate for closing the doors that might make it a possibility to begin with. So public housing has not always been perfect. The Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority has not always been perfect, but we are doing the work of dismantling systems of oppression by making sure we keep housing affordable. CRHA in particular right now has exceptionally strong executive leadership, which we will see will not only long-term benefit the residents, but it will in the short term as well. But Shelby, you might be asking, Midway Manor isn't public housing, so why are you here? Yes, in general, FAR has focused on public housing residents, which we will continue to do. But today we are here to advocate on behalf of some of the residents at Midway Manor. We know that it is not in the condition that is becoming of our citizens. Our seniors deserve better, including an elevator that is consistent, a maintenance team, and an owner's team who are invested in the short and long term. One of the residents asked me tonight to specifically pose the question that I'm about to say. In 2 years, the lease that was signed last year will be up. What's going to happen to the residents here? Where are they going to go? And as we're asking these questions, I want us all to think about who in the city of Charlottesville is really catering to residents between that 0 and 30% AMI. I, again, want to uplift the Housing Authority. They are doing a lot of work right now to make sure that they are catering towards the residents who make between 0 and 30% AMI. So my hope is that the owners of Midway Manor will have a resident-directed process when it comes to their fate. That if the building's to be redone, include the residents. That if they're going to sell it to another company or another authority, to find a way to get the resident input, but don't leave them without answers and with no long-term plan. My hope is that this avenue of conversation tonight will uplift the needs of the folks at Midway Manor, as well as all the folks who are in subsidized housing in Charlottesville. And thank you so much for the opportunity to put this on everybody's radar.
Before I open it up to our public, is what we're here for. Are there any commissioners that have questions before we move forward? All right.
I do. Hold on, Jessica. My question goes back to the lease agreement because I need to get a little more clarity on that. So who owned Midway Manor before? And then who gave the authority to be sold on lease to this new company that's only going to keep it under a lease for the next 2 years? That's my question.
Those are great questions. I will go ahead and transparently say that I don't have that information, but I think you are asking a great line of questioning that we should continue going down.
Okay, because we need to definitely again put this on, and I know it has been put on City Council's radar. As we need to take care of that community for sure. We have not done them a very good service by making sure that elevators and things that have been working and some other things within that space. And again, just like the person that gave the question, what do those residents do in 2 years and where do they go? Because we don't have space and we don't have any affordable housing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ernest.
No, go ahead, Mary.
I was just wondering if Victoria could answer the question, because I know LAJC sort of looks at all of those issues.
So I have like a partial answer, and I know that Todd has also corresponded with the new management company. So there's like two pieces of this. One is that the place switched actual like ownership of the building and the land recently, and the company that owns it is sort of one of those vague like LLCs like that just created to own that building. And then they also have a new management company, which is a separate company. And so both of those have actually switched recently. I do know that I think there's a public application to renew tax credits for the building. Which would mean, and this goes to Shelby's point about what it means to be affordable. Tax credits it's a federal program that imposes certain income restrictions in exchange for tax credits. It's like you have to charge lower rent, and you get these credits from the federal government. Unfortunately, that program doesn't make the housing affordable in the sense that Shelby was talking about automatically, like doesn't go to that 0 to 30% AMI. The rent would be limited, but it's not limited to that level. what's expiring in 2 years is called a HAP contract, which is a housing assistance payment contract. And that is what is making Midway Manor really affordable, that contract. And I honestly don't know the answer to whether this new company is planning to renew that contract longer. But they have said, I think, that they are intending to keep it affordable. But I think there is a question to Shelby's point about what affordability means. But I don't know if Todd, if you've heard anything else from them.
Yeah, I can comment on that a little bit. So back when we met with residents in November of 2021 at Midway Manor in the lobby, Victoria was there, Mary was there, and we heard a lot of their concerns. And one of which being the concern about the future of the building and the subsidy that keeps rent affordable there, along with many of the maintenance concerns that, including the elevators and others. So we wrote all this down, then composed a letter to the owner at the time, which was WHH Trice, and outlined those concerns, requested a response, and specifically requested a meeting with corporate leadership to talk about that. Then the building changed hands in December. The new owners called Standard Property Company. The current management company is called the Franklin Johnston Group. And took a little while to figure out who was who and who to talk to, but then got a point of contact at the Franklin Johnston Group and sent the letter to them and said, you know, we sent this to the previous owner, didn't get a response. Would like to hear from you and the new owner as to what the plan is. And fortunately, they provided a pretty robust set of answers to the questions that were presented in the letter. And one of the questions was, in fact, about what is going to be the future of the subsidies attached to the building. And based on the response, they said they have intentions of renewing, I believe, and I don't have the letter right in front of me at the moment, but I believe there's the option to renew up to 30 years. And I think they had, at least informally, said that was the intent, was to apply for a 30-year renewal. So there's that intent. What they didn't respond to in that letter was whether or not they would commit to a meeting with corporate leadership and residents. So we recently did more outreach to residents to have another sign-on letter requesting that meeting. And I got a response actually this morning from the Franklin Johnston Group representative, and they said they would be sending out a letter, I think tomorrow, about when the meeting or what the plan for that meeting with residents would be. So we have to wait and see what that response actually looks like in terms of what residents receive. But that's a chance for residents to actually ask corporate leadership what is the plan and sort of hear it straight from them.
Wolfgang, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I'll make this quick because I want to hear from our attendees. But one question that's been on my mind has been if the number of accessible subsidized housing units is currently meeting the demand specifically for accessible housing units. And I know a large part of this conversation is talk about the quality, but also and affordability. But I would also wonder if you could, either Shelby or Victoria, lend insight onto whether the demand for housing either for seniors or adults with disabilities in our community, if the number of units available is currently meeting the demand for those units.
I can go ahead and reference something that was from 2016, where there were about 1,100 families on the waiting list for public housing in Charlottesville, waiting for 376 units. So, and I'm sure that with the pandemic, and again, I've already applauded the direction that CRHA is going in, I think that will only increase the number. So we need more affordable housing units, more deeply affordable housing units.
Yeah, I would just agree and say, like, statewide, I think like the National Low Income Housing Coalition estimates the gap between need of affordable housing and the existence of it. And for the state of Virginia, I think in the last year, it was like the gap is like 200,000 affordable housing units is like what we would need to meet demand. And then also generally, I feel like sometimes it's like a misconception that public housing or something like that works the same way that Social Security does, where like if you're eligible, you get it. But like Shelby was saying with the wait list, that's not true for housing. It's a limited resource. And so I think generally only like 1 in 4 families that really need that benefit actually ever get it.
And I'll also go ahead and add, there's a really great scholarly article that I'm going to suggest everybody reads called "We Call These Projects Home." And in that article, it said that there's a gap of about 6 million units for extremely low income residents, and then a shortage of 5 million units for low-income renters across the country. So it's both at the local level and the national level as well.
Yes, please send us that link.
I will.
Can you comment on the accessibility piece?
In your slides.
I don't have anything off the top of my head about accessibility, but I would love to do some research and be able to follow up about that.
Before I turn it over to the public, I just want to say Ernest and I were able to meet with Counselor Payne. That was really informative. He couldn't be here, as all the counselors couldn't be here, but the mayor mentioned interest, and so we had a conversation. It was really informative. So I'm looking forward to sharing what we learned with our commission related to that meeting. But one thing I just wanted to share specifically here, there's lots I want to share, but the main series listening to me. The one thing I do want to share here is that something that Councilor Payne mentioned is going to be really important is that there has to be changes within policies and laws. So I know Midway Manor, for example, was experienced a lot with one of the elevators not working. And so if two don't work, then that is breaking fire code, and there's ways to address it. If one's only working, it's harder for them to intervene from like a legal and from a like city perspective. But if we change the policies to better address the coding for fire codes, then they can step in. And so again, we're not here to provide solutions per se today. We do want to really listen, but I just want to mention like to the commission, because I didn't get to talk to you guys, that I hope that tonight, as we're hearing, we can start thinking about like what policies do we need to change? What laws do we need to change to help really support kind of what we're hearing? So I just want you to know, that's what I'm going to be hearing today a little bit and be thinking a lot about, but just wanted to share that. Okay, so now time for, I know I saw two hands raised. I'll just read our statement as if we normally do for public comment, but the commission is welcome to all comments today and questions. We're committed to listening carefully and thoughtfully to what is presented. It says a maximum of 16 public comments today. Slots are available per meeting, or that's available per meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. The commission requests the public refrain from engaging in personal attacks against commissioners and staff members, and ask the comments and questions to focus on matters related to human rights within the city. So I will turn it over to Joy. I saw you first with your hand raised, and then I'll go, I think it was Nancy who was next. So Todd, can you promote Joy to panelists? Yeah, thank you.
Joe, you should have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Joy.
Yes.
Wow. Who is that young executive director of FAR? You go, Shelby. My name is Joy Johnson. I have been a public housing resident since 1983. And I am proud to be a public housing resident. Why? Because it's something I could afford. I didn't have to depend on anybody to help me. Whatever income I have, that's the income that my rent will be charged to. However, I did take an interest in trying to understand policies and how they work and why they work and how they affect people. Fast forward, I learned all of that through Hope 6, but I'm going to fast forward because I don't have a lot of time. Tax credit right now is the most sexiest thing about building affordable housing now. And it's a code for me that is not for me and my peers who makes below $50,000 or even $20,000. It's 60% of the AMI. And her definition for AMI is 80% of the AMI, which calculates to you got to be making $80,000 a year or $60,000 a year to sit in a tax credit unit. So what we are trying to do in public housing, our residents, we learned that we have to put some, in order to make it deeply affordable, we will have to get other funding attached to it to make it deeply affordable. And I don't think that we have educated the public well. Maybe the Human Rights Commission can help us with that, CRHA and FAR, because what we're doing is something that Richmond is not even doing. We are also, not only are we preserving or trying to preserve the public, the 376 public housing, we are also adding, called Crescent Halls has 105 units. On the ball field, we're building 63 brand new units. And the women of South First Street have went from 58 units to 113 units. Now, all of those units are not public housing. Anytime you do tax credit, that whole building is a tax credit building. And to answer the gentleman who asked the question about who made that decision, it's the investors. The investors can pull out anytime and said, we got what we got our money that we put in it and we're pulling out. And that could happen with what we're doing. We're just hoping that we can, work to change some things so that after 30 years, that we're working on making sure other investors will carry it on for another 30. So I just wanted to say that. I'm glad that you all are, as the conditions, I will say, condition has been bad. And Mr. Sales, when he came on board, he was handed a mess. And he's trying now to correct some of those wrongs, which is maintenance was a problem. Yes, we know that. We're trying now to fix that. And we're rehabbing Crescent Halls. We're building new units, but we're also doing parallel track, which means the units that are not going to get get rebuilt, they're going to go in and they're going to rehab them. So people will have to move and then come back to the unit. So there is a plan there, but I just think people don't want to understand. They just think public housing doesn't work. But what we are rebuilding is not just public housing. It is affordable housing for people from 0 to 60% of the AMI. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Joy. Nancy, did you still want to speak? And feel free, I don't know if this is okay, Todd. I know normally we hear from the public and then we respond, but is it okay if we have an opportunity to respond live since it's meant to be a discussion, Todd?
Yeah, Jessica, it's sort of your prerogative in terms of how you want to handle it. And just your other question was that Nancy doesn't seem to be in the attendees anymore, just so you know. And I don't see any other hands, but folks can raise their hand and we'll see it.
Okay, let's do it like that for this. Like if there's commissioners or Victoria or Shelby, if you want to respond, I'd like for this part to be discussion and kind of a back and forth as much as needed. Shelby and Victoria, you have anything to add to what Joy was saying?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say thank you, Joy. And she said something that I also want to highlight. And I know I said this in my initial comment, but I do want to reiterate it. We are dismantling the systems by undoing what the city did in the 60s and 70s. They took power from the residents. Now we're ensuring that they get it back. So a lot of these initiatives that we're working on are truly resident led. So like the windows over at Crescent Halls, the residents picked them. The furniture that you're going to see in the second phase of South First Street, the residents picked it. And I think it's important that we uplift that and make sure we make space to respect what the community wants as we acknowledge that power imbalance that used to be.
Agreed. Joy, I don't know if you're still there. I just have a quick, Ernest, I see your hand too. Joy, you mentioned, I think, a good point about educating the public. Can you just, feel free, can you tell me a little bit more of what you think that would look like and what's missing currently?
Sure. There's a lot that is missing, and I just want you to know that I have been blessed. Hi, Mary Bauer. Mary Bauer and I worked together on some things when I was just young, and her husband also helped us to think about having a citywide organization, and we did it. Anyway, yeah, some of the things that are missing is that I don't think the community understand all of the things that goes together to make a deal to rebuild or to build. Also, there are CBDG dollars that I don't think people understand what's community development, development block grant money is to be used for. We don't follow the city budget the way that we should. And I think MACA used to be Monticello Area Community Action Agency, used to be an advocacy group that does all of that, that makes sure the community understand what's going on with housing, what's going on with jobs, what's going on. I think educating the public has dwindled, right? For me, it's so much, zoning. That's a big one. Who follow zoning? Who understand that you have neighborhoods to this day from laws that was created in the 30s is still on the books today in 2022 that says Black people cannot live in certain neighborhoods. But yes, still we talk about equity, and yes, still we talk about we want people to pull themselves up with the bootstrap, but you still have a chain and a rope around our neck. If we want to advance, we can't. So I think it's a lot of things that needs to have, but seriously now today, zoning is a big one. That's how they were able to dismangle Vinegar Hill and let it sit for almost 20 years. Zoning, right now, the rewrite of zoning, I think everybody on the Human Rights Commission should be involved in that process and bringing some of their family members to the table to understand it, because what happened to us today will happen to you tomorrow. Zoning is a big rewrite. The annual plan, a lot of people don't understand about the annual plan, the comprehensive plan. It's usually those powerful people who research it and have the time that sits at the table. And most of the time, we're just learning. And the only reason why we are so successful, I do believe, is because we have legal aid to research some stuff for us. Other than that, we probably wouldn't get where we're getting. I'm very connected to the national level. And so if people in Charlottesville don't want to help me, I just go national, because I don't need the folks here to be able to help me, even though laws are different. The federal law is different from state law. So I don't want you to think that I'm so pompous that I just don't, I'm just saying I do have network and I do have resources where some of our residents, they don't even begin to understand the storm and the wave or the tsunami that is coming towards them. That's why FAR have to exist. This is why FAR has to exist, but we have to connect to other powerful committees such as the Human Rights Commission or any other who is really, really, because what's happening to, and I have to say this before I jump onto the city council meeting, I'm double whatever you call it, tasked right now. But I have to say this: what's happening to the units at down in Belmont is the same thing that's happening to Midway Manor. But guess what? You know who it's going to hit next? Heartwood. Heartwood is a tax credit problem. Is a tax credit project, and after a while, with all of the development that's gonna happen out there, who's paying attention to Heartwood? Who? FAR is, legal aid is. That's why I say we have to educate everyone, not just certain people, everyone, and hope that, you know, that we can change the trajectory in what is happening. I don't know if I answered your question because I
You
said a
did.
lot.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for coming to speak. I'd love if you partner more closely with us. I agree. I just want to say that I've heard what you said. I was taking notes, but I'd love to, reach out or connect with you on another basis just to hear more. I agree. In summary of what I hear you saying, is a lot of things that the general public is just not aware of, right? It's a lot of things. There's a lot of legalese things that are happening. And so being able to inform the public to have a more unified and understanding, right? This is all complicated. It's something that we're trying to do even in our Human Rights Commission about putting things out in plain language, because legalese language is really hard to understand unless you're a lawyer. And so I agree with that. So I'd love to just put that out there. I'd love to partner with you. And Shelby just messaged me that she can help me connect with you. I would love that, just to see, how we can collectively partner. I'm hearing that to the commission as something we should consider and take on. So thank you, Ms. Johnson, so much for coming on and
You're quite
multitasking
welcome.
between now and the city.
And the other thing I want to put on your radar is that our community is not just African Americans anymore. We have families from Burmese, and we have them from Nigeria, and we have about 6 or 7 language. And right now in our community, Todd can tell you, I call Todd all the time, but the language, it's a language barrier. And if we are developing a community and they live in it, they should have a voice. They must have a voice. They are a part of the community. And I don't see any organization who is saying, hey, I'm out here to help break the language barrier. That is a big problem in our public housing. And we have IRC families in every corner of our public housing. And that is an issue also. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you again, Ms. Johnson. I know we don't, I know something personally in our commission, we are working to make that language barrier, again, more accessible with plain language, and with also working on a project to make translating our work and when we're putting out to multiple languages. So thank you for that point. Yes, Ernest. Ernest, you're muted.
Oh, I put my hand down instead of unmute. Ms. Johnson Lee, I tell you right now, she got me kind of fired up. Question I wanted to ask her was about who was Mr. Sales? Who's Mr. Sales?
I can go ahead and take that. So Mr. John Sales is the executive director of the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority.
Okay.
And he's been there a little over a year.
Okay.
And I think he's an attendee. I see his name, and he's attended several of our recent meetings. So, even when he hasn't spoken out on particular things, we really appreciate your just being here and listening.
Also, Ernest, I'm happy to make that introduction if you would like, or I can let the two of y'all.
No, I just want to know, since so he's the executive director for housing. So I just wanted to recognize him, since Ms. Johnson did, for what he's trying to do in helping with the maintenance issues and things like that are going on. So I just want to know who he was, and when I see his name or that type of thing, I want to make sure I say hello to him and touch base with him. That was one of my major questions, but I mean, she said so much in that last part, I'm like, I don't know what to really ask anymore, because it was just so much stuff that she provided as far as information wise, that, because I've always heard about how, even before, developers will come in and say they're going to put in some affordable housing. and then they build something, and then they go, oops, you know what? I don't want to put more affordable housing in here. And then the city, then they say, we'll pay this fine, and the city will gladly take the fine that they pay, and then the developer gets to build what they want. And really, once they do it, I mean, what's the city going to really say to a developer that doesn't do affordable housing? I mean, go back and look at the Dewberry, that little situation we got downtown. Where they're just gonna stop building and leave a frame of a building. You don't want that in your area either. So I wish there was a way that the city could put more pressure on developers who decide that they're not going to put affordable housing in, and say, we're not going to accept that. This is what you say we're going to do, and we expect you to do that, and hope the developer will go through. But it seems like that does not happen. Because I wish we had more people or developers who would that would develop affordable housing and take it, because we really need affordable housing. But I know everything is about the almighty dollar, about making more money and that type of thing. But again, if we go back and look at the numbers of units needed compared to the people, the units that we have compared to the units of people that are waiting, it's never going to match up. I appreciate her talking about because I was wondering when they started to rehab some of these units, where were people going to go? So I love when she talked about the parallel track. So that was something I wanted to hear, that they're working on that. And that's a good thing. And I hope that people will go back to the rehab spots. And, when they get done, that there will be more units, because we'll be able to build some more things, some more housing that way as well. But it is really a concern that, there's really no upward mobility for people to get out of affordable. I mean, if that's you feel comfortable being there, yes. But I wish there was a way for upward mobility for people to be able to, if they could get out of affordable housing and buy a house and get into a house, that they could do that. But it's just, like we talked about with Councilor Payne. I mean, there's no middle class in Charlottesville, and if it is, it's about that big. It's not very much. So it's either, go ahead, Shelby.
Oh, and then the other thing about public housing is that for a lot of residents, public housing is their key to upward mobility, because it allows them to be able to have a rent that is reflective of the income that they have. And I think and I appreciate you saying that you appreciated Joy's energy, because and I think she has her hand raised too. But to quickly tie it back to Midway Manor, the resident, she asked me to pose a question. I'll say it again. In 2 years, the lease that was signed last year will be up. What's going to happen to the residents here? Where are they going to go? And I think starting to think about the future now in this moment can allow us to be like, okay, we got to start having resident meetings. I've not been in Midway Manor for a couple of years, but I imagine it might need some redevelopment. So getting them on that redevelopment track and making sure that they, like we're doing, the residents are being incorporated into that process.
Yeah. And sorry, I didn't say it. I definitely hear clearly the education piece from Ms. Johnson. I also heard the power dynamic, right? We all are navigating that in many different ways. And I just want to acknowledge that I heard that. I'm sorry I didn't say it, but I do hear that, right? Like being able to partner with the Human Rights Commission, that we have that power to bring recommendations to the highest of our government within the city. And so that was not missed on me. Ms. Johnson, I do want to give room for others to speak. Is it possible that we can get other members of the public to discuss? And if there's nothing, then I'll let you speak. But for right now, do you mind if I'd like to go on to see if there's others that have to comment. And I promise I'll come back to you, Ms. Johnson. Are there other comments? Mr. Sales, would you like to speak? We're talking about you. We appreciate you being here. Perfect. Mr. Sales has his hand raised.
John has the floor.
Sorry, double tasking and trying to keep calm my baby. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am John Sales, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority. I've been here since August of 2020. Happy to be here. I understood there was a lot of work to do, and I'm happy to be doing the work. I'm opening to listening to what concerns the community has about public housing and housing with vouchers. I mean, we have 376 public housing units, but we have over 400 vouchers on the street. So our total capacity is a lot higher than just the 376. So we can also control what happens in those units and how the landlord takes care of those units, because we have the ability to rent, to put other sanctions on them and to restrict them from using a voucher or leasing up a voucher in other units that they may own. So we have a lot of flexibility and a lot of power. We just have to know the issues that are happening inside of the units. And sometimes it takes a little while for residents to come up and speak to us about it. I know on last Thursday, I had a resident come find me at West Haven. He's like, hey, my girlfriend's dealing with this issue and the landlord's threatening to kick us out if I come and complain about it because they don't want to fix any of the issues. They said you can either take it how it is or leave. And that's certainly not anything that we want to accept, resident having to make that decision of living in housing that's not habitable or being evicted because they complain. And so we take those matters very serious. And so if there are those concerns, if anyone hears those concerns, please let us know. I know Todd and I, we've communicated a lot about issues dealing with vouchers and public housing. And so he has my contact information and he can share that with you all. And if you all would like me to come to a future meeting and present something, I'm open to that as well.
We do, and yes, please. And thank you, Todd, for always being an amazing connector. Thank you, Mr. Sales, for being here and for speaking. I really appreciate that. Any other public comments? Trying to do that awkward silence. Okay, Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
I'm mute. I'm double tasking. Ooh, I'm sorry. No, I just want to the things that I wanted to really highlight is the 12 women at South First Street who took a year, a whole 9 months to a year out of their Sunday, because they did it on a Sunday, to actually come and learn about zoning, to learn about critical slopes, to learn about site plans, to learn about doors, roof, to learn about runoffs, to learn about storm drains, to learn about all that stuff. So the question that was proposed to me a little bit earlier, all of those things, the public needs to understand about it, because it all those things matters. But I think that those 12 ladies should be invited to you all group, to the human rights group, so they can tell you or explain to you what they have learned. This is different from a Venable neighborhood or a Belmont neighborhood or whatever. These are public housing residents who they say don't have any worth, who came together and put something together. And they're also doing it at 6th Street right now, right? This is not, this whole thing about, redoing our community is not an easy task. It really isn't. It's a lot to learn, but they're doing it. And so they need to be commended. And then the other thing I wanted to say also is that, housing is a human right. And somebody who is making zero to somebody who's making 100,000 deserve to have a home. And I just think that the city has not committed to defining what affordability is. And I think if we don't do that and continue to build, then what you're going to continue to get is what you see now. So what you see is what you get. And it's going to be the 60% of the AMI, and it's going to force poor people, and poor people are no longer just Black. They're going to be forcing poor people out of the city. I don't know if they're going to let me speak, but I'm going to raise my hand and city council. But thank you. I'm going to continue to listen.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other attendees who'd like to speak? Yes, Ernest.
I agree with her, and I would love to hear the city's definition of what is affordable housing in the city. What is their definition? So we will know, because I don't think we really, I think we have what are federal and maybe, I don't know, maybe state stuff, but I would love to hear what the city defines it as. And I will say this, not just to, I would love to hear not what city council, but what the city as a city defines it as. Because I think what city council says does not always jive with what government, what the city as a whole sees it as an issue or as a commitment. But I will not, because city council can only do what constituents say, or what they're going to do so much. It still takes the city, to me, as a whole, to have the commitment to want to make change in policy. So I don't want to hear what city council per se defines it as, but what we as a city are going to define it as to make the difference.
Victoria, you have your hand raised.
I was just gonna say other folks may know the answer more. Mariah is one of our other attorneys who has like delved more deeply than I have into like the comprehensive plan and a lot of the plans of the city. There's not a clear definition of it. It's vague, I think, and it doesn't necessarily match in different city documents. So I do think that's an issue of having a clear definition, like Ms. Joy was talking about, because then, having it be vague allows a lot of different definitions. So like anything below just like straight market rate can be affordable versus like public housing, which are two pretty huge differences.
I also love that sorry if I'm out of order.
Okay. No, you're fine.
I love the idea of the commission pushing the city to have a clear definition of it. I think that is a healthy impulse.
Mary.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up Joy's comments about housing as a human right, and I personally deeply believe that, and I know we didn't have a ton of residents who showed up this evening, but I think the process of preparing for this was really helpful. We got out and talked to a lot of folks at Midway Manor. We really heard from them, and we take that into this you know, even if I know when it was at Midway Manor last week, people talked about kind of logistical obstacles to participating. But we're also planning now for our kind of annual retreat. And I just, you know, I want to say to like everybody who has spoken today, attendees, that like that this is information we will take right to our retreat and really figure out like what is it that the Human Rights Commission can do, and you know, what kind of change can we push for. And so I really just want to thank everybody who kind of helped present and shared. And even though this is like a hearing for us to listen tonight, like I am very confident that the commissioners will take this very seriously and try to devise a strategy where we can be helpful and effective in pushing the city to be as best as it can be.
Yeah. You said words out of my mouth, Mary, but yes, that is the plan. And I just want to say also, it was a great meeting that we had with Councilor Payne. And one thing that he gave us that I'll just put out here, but to add to what Mary is saying, is that it's definitely high on my agenda that we as a commission will come up with issues that we're going to keep pressing council for and get council members to be advocate for, because that's what he was saying. We need consistent. He's like, if you have to tell me every week what this issue is. So I'm just committing to you. Sorry, Commissioner, I'm just now telling you this, but that is something very active I'm planning to do for our retreat. What are the 3 to 5 things we are going to champion? We are going to take on doing this year, find champions like Councilor Payne on the council and continue to tell them, continue to bring up the issue. And again, per our conversation with him, what is really effective and what they need to hear are what are the laws, right? So if we can point out the law, like Victoria was saying, is really ambiguous in this. Let's clearly define what affordable housing is, because there are these gray areas, and like presenting the plan and addressing it from a policy. I know that's maybe not what we want to hear, but that's what it is, right? They only have so much within their power too, within being council members, my mayor. And so presenting it in that way. So thank you, Mary, for that comment. Are there others? And I want to say we did have a plan for Midway Manor to be represented here tonight. It did not work out technology wise, but I want to give credit to our team, Todd and Mary and others who were able to go into Midway Manor, were able to talk one-on-one with residents. I'm sure we'll continue that outreach and dialogue. We were really hoping that they could be represented here tonight. It just did not work out as far as technology. So we will come up with a way to still have those conversations. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak? I'm an extrovert, sorry, the silence kills me. Anyone? Okay, I'm just going to keep talking. Commissioners, what are your thoughts to kind of what you're hearing me say from our meeting with Councilor Payne? You guys have any responses to what's been heard tonight thus far? Yes, Todd.
I just want to maybe make one other comment that's tangential, but also related to this, is that there's also a discussion not only about affordable housing, but thinking about those who are experiencing homelessness in our community and what are the barriers to even getting off the street. Not only is there the lack of affordable housing, but I think we also have to think about what other supports do people need to be prepared if there, say there was an infinite number of affordable units out there at the 0 to 30% range in AMI. Some people are going to need considerable more supports, especially around mental health, substance use, and we have a drastically insufficient supply to meet the demand for those needs as well in our community. And just to note, there's been a series of listening sessions that Ashley Reynolds Marshall, who's our deputy city manager for racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, has been hosting with a lot of people in the housing provider realm, as well as the homelessness services provision realm, to talk about this. There's going to be another summit kind of hashing out a few action items, but I just wanted to let you know that I think these two discussions are happening in parallel, but join and need to be considered as a whole at some point. So
Thank you for bringing that up, Todd. Catherine?
Yeah, thank you for that, Todd. No, I think I'm hoping that the commission can be very attentive to the zoning process that's coming up. I know that was mentioned earlier. I mean, I agree that there are legislative changes that are needed to make affordable housing better and more accessible in Virginia. But that's a very big and long-term goal that we can add our voice to, but don't have a lot of say about. But the zoning writing is really where we're going to be able to make sure that the plan for enough housing actually happens, right? And some of the things Ernest was talking about before, the frustrations with the city's inability to enforce proffers around affordable housing. With the new zoning, there will be the ability to really make sure that those, we don't have to rely on proffers anymore. It can be written into zoning, and there will be some teeth, some ability of the city to enforce the kind of housing that's built. And so some of those old frustrations go away. There have been legislative changes and they haven't been enacted without the zoning. So I hope we can really think about how to be strategic around using the voice of the Human Rights Commission to keep those conversations on track. I think there's going to be a lot of NIMBY opposition. They were unhappy with how the comprehensive plan went. And they see the zoning as a way to come in and undermine the progress that was made in that comprehensive plan. So we'll have to be attentive.
That's a good point. Anyone else?
Well, I think we should declare it an important and successful meeting that we will follow up on, and that, we're committed to these issues. That's my vote anyway. No, we're not technically voting, but.
No, I was pausing for a reason. I was gathering my thoughts. So if there is no other comments from the public, that's kind of also waiting to see if others maybe had anything to say. In lieu of that, I'll just kind of summarize what I heard tonight. Again, thank you for Veronica and Shelby. I look forward to continuing this partnership that we've had, and there are definitely concerns within our community. But kind of the main themes tonight were zoning, educating the public, what partnerships, what powers that we have. And then on our end, again, we're going to continue these conversations. Again, this is one of many that I hope we have, even though we have one dedicated time. I hope the conversation can continue. And as a Human Rights Commission, we will be taking all that we're hearing from this and others to our retreat to talk about what things we can press, what things can we move forward. And so I was hoping there'd be more that would come and talk with those. Thank you for the 8 that came to attend and are listening. Again, if you have anything like offline that you'd like to bring up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And so we already kind of responded to matters by the public. And if there are no objections, we will adjourn at 7:17 p.m.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks,
Bye.
Shelby, Victoria. Thanks to all who spoke.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.